versus his permanent homelessness for the rest of his life. I know not all cases of homelessness are related to murder, but they were in his case. I kind of wonder if some of the bigger things in life could be changed in homelessness, is, by overturning Roe versus Wade and giving the right to life to children before they're born. I think it plays an important role. Do you think there's much of a connection? Or?
I think there's a connection. I would go even further. There's a connection with the fact that the Lord was very clear in Scripture about blood being on the land, and that there are repercussions for blood being on the land. And clearly there is. Somebody investigated this in Spokane, and what they found was that the aborted fetuses, which are human beings, were being burned, and then the blood itself was being washed down the drain, which went into the sewer system. So literally the blood was being washed into the land. And when I found that out, it was very profound, because literally the Scripture comes alive thousands of years after that was written.
Amen. I think it was in Deuteronomy or Numbers, probably Deuteronomy, but the Lord gave the Jewish priests a certain ceremony to do if they had found a body and couldn't resolve the murder, to cleanse the land of of what you're talking about, the shading of innocent blood, because for some reason it affected the land that the Jews had possessed at that period of time. And I find that quite interesting that even in the Old Testament, God put his foot down on unjust killing.
He did, on the killing of innocent human life. Absolutely he did. And that's why we have such a responsibility in America, because we the people are the government. So it's incumbent on all of us to be that government. It's incumbent on all of us to get involved. It's incumbent on all of us to get involved in social media and get online and make these things happen, because we're the government. We're the ones held responsible if we're silent, if we don't do anything, just by our very system.
But instead it got worse. And for the next 16 years, I suffered from nightmares, flashbacks, anxiety attacks, eating issues, anger outbursts, and inability to believe my husband could love me. I couldn't bond with my children, nor trust my parenting decisions. After all, look how I had done with my first. My marriage was falling apart, and ironically, I was on the fast track to becoming a single mother. A woman who sees a leak, a water stain coming through her wall, and she does everything she can to paint it and sand it down, and just continually tries to keep refreshing it and making it go away. And over time, the stain gets worse and worse, and every once in a while she thinks, maybe this could be because of my past. But it's just too much to deal with tearing the whole wall down. So she just continues. She replaces the carpet. She builds a new wall. All this emotional energy going into hiding that. And eventually she tears it down, and she sees this pipe that is just leaking and realizes that's the problem. But the issue is that now she has no idea what to do. She's exhausted, and all she can do is sit there crying. That's how I lived for 16 years. There is good news, and this is the part I love to share. My healing journey began a few months after we dragged our bruised and bleeding train wreck of a marriage into the doors of our local church. A brave woman shared from the pulpit that she'd had an abortion and that she had suffered until she went through a post-abortion healing program.
I love to share my story of hope and healing after suffering for many years from my poor choice of abortion.
Very good, Cynthia. In fact, you wrote a book.
I did.
And captured really the essence of many of the questions, I think. Want to tell us a little bit about...
Love Will is a fictional story about a group of people who sheltered a pregnant, homeless, mentally ill woman from a government agency who was coercing her to abort her child.
Wow. Wow, that sounds good.
And it was a very healing journey for me to write it, because after serving in the ministry for so many years, there were so many stories that needed to be told.
Yes.
My personal and many others. And so to be able to pour that out in dialogue and also give not only statistics regarding the issue, but also the emotional impact of it.
I deal with pregnant women a lot, especially sometimes they're homeless, you know, and what's really a motivating factor for them to really consider an abortion is how am I going to get the money to get this kid into the world?
Yep. I've heard it said that choosing abortion is similar to an animal chewing their leg off in a trap.
Wow.
They don't want
Yes,
it, but that's
yes.
what they have to do.
Yes.
And
Wow.
you know, when
That is such a good analogy.
yeah.
Yes.
And in the book, I share my thought process that I went through when I was making that decision. And I think that's important for people to see too, because so many people will make comments, or because they truly believe that it's always out of selfishness, or you know, just meanness or selfishness or
Yes.
power or control.
Right.
When a lot of times it is fear that's driving. It was with me.
Yes.
And I've spoken with hundreds of other women where it was the case.
Yeah.
I think in the
Yes.
back of their mind they think because it's dad that doesn't feel and won't have to go through all this pain they're going through. You
Well, I
know,
actually
and-
think that oftentimes they don't think of it as a child, because they think of it as a piece of tissue. It's easy to believe that lie when that's what you want to believe.
Sure.
I could have never done what I did if I knew the heart was beating.
Right.
You know.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
But that being said, there are people who still have pressures and need to make that choice even after they've felt the child move, even after they've named them. And again, it's out of fear. They may have other children, they may be being coerced.
Yes. Yes.
I think coercion hurt.
The Catholic, well, there's a Catholic group that says that 85% of the women who chose abortion didn't have a choice. They didn't want to choose it. They felt they had no choice.
It's like a mother bird looking for a place to build her nest. And when, you know, even if people say, I'll support you with whatever you choose, when you add that in with a big, strong current, I mean, we're right here by the Columbia River. You got a big, strong current that's pointing you towards the poor choice of abortion. And then one or two people say, I'll support you,
Yes.
however. Well, that's just pulled away in the current.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I think the answer,
Yes.
although I think it should be, I think the answer is not to make it illegal. I think the answer is to make it unthinkable, to take the demand
agree
away.
1,000%.
Because those parents who take their children in, thinking that they're going to help them,
Yes.
thinking that it's best for them, if they read this book, hopefully they will understand. If they get on the internet,
Yes.
go to Silent No More Awareness,
Yeah.
hopefully they will see it from a
It's
different
a matter of educating people.
It's education, absolutely.
Just a quick story. In Canada for years, it was if any Indian came into town, they were to be scalped immediately. That law was still on the books up till about 15 years ago.
No way.
And people haven't been scalped in decades.
Right.
So education won out
Yeah.
and was able, to defeat that thing. And so they finally changed the law. And one thing I noticed in your book, Sydney, was that there was a gal there that did receive healing after her abortion. It's a beautiful part of the story, I think. And wow, excellent. So that's a very good thing.
Having
about the book.
personally experienced that,
Yes.
because I was the character, I would say.
Oh,
I
really?
think it's pretty beautiful.
Okay. Oh, all right.
And
I didn't
would
realize that.
also
Okay.
venture to say that my husband
Yeah.
would think it was pretty beautiful because
Yeah,
it changed
yeah.
our marriage.
Wow. Life is so complicated about, with relationships and what can affect the marriage and so forth. I mean, it's just, it's a beautiful life. To me, we need to do it God's way.
Yes.
If we do it God's way, in other words, date somebody, get married, have children, then you have grandkids.
Yes.
It's a great thing if we can do it good, but it doesn't always happen that
No,
way.
and the nice thing is that God's way is also, if you go off the path, you get to come back.
Yes.
And
It's not
that's-
that hard
yeah.
to come back.
When I went through my
Yes.
post-abortion healing program, the very first part of it was learning about God's character. You see, I needed to know His character
Yes,
before I
wow.
could give Him this burden.
Wow, that's exciting. Thank you, Sydney. Sure appreciate all of your great work
Thank you.
on behalf of the unborn.
It's a pleasure.
It's just so great.
I think the sad thing about this whole issue is that what's needed to understand the true impact of abortion is going through it, then the time involved afterwards to realize what a big mistake it is.
Yes.
And most parents with children, like if their teenager gets pregnant, that's the last thing they're going to think about is how is this going to affect its future. It's just now. But the but they're
They're
also
not
thinking,
realizing it's their grandchild.
yeah, that's the sad facts to it.
There's a statistic that the average length of time it takes a woman to realize that she needs help or that she's been damaged is 11 years.
Wow.
I'm stubborn. It took me 17 years.
Wow.
So if you interview people coming out of the abortion clinic, they're in that first stage, which is relief. They've chewed their leg off. They don't realize they're bleeding, but they're free from the trap.
Wow.
So that's where it gets complicated.
So that relief, definitely, because now the
yes.
problem is over.
Supposedly.
Yeah. Wow.
The statistic is 43% of women have had one or more abortions, but in prison, that statistic goes up to 80%.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt that at all.
And that's because they're going to drugs and alcohol to numb the pain. And then they get in trouble, they need more drugs or alcohol.
Yeah,
and
sure. What about mental institutions? Do we even have mental institutions?
Drug addiction is insanity in a sense,
well, the
isn't
reason I
it?
ask, Cindy, is we had a gal that used to help us here at Planned Parenthood. She worked at a mental floor in a hospital in Portland, and they would not let her ask the gals that came in about abortion.
So again, I mentioned when I was sharing about the book Forbidden Grief.
Yes, I've read that.
In the very opening paragraphs, she talks about, she's a counselor, Teresa Burke, and she actually added that question to her intake form, have you had an abortion? And one of the women came in, immediately got angry, why do you have this on this form? I've been to 8 different counselors in the last 10 years, none of them needed to know that.
Yeah.
Could there be a reason?
Yeah.
See,
exactly.
Yeah. And when she was writing her thesis, she was doing a support group for women who've struggled with bulimia and anorexia.
Yes.
And somehow the abortion word came up and a woman ran out screaming.
Wow.
And she started asking, and it was like 8 out of the 10 of them were post-abortive.
Yeah.
So she went to her professor and said, I think there's a connection here. And he said, this is about bulimia. You're not about that.
Exactly. Wow.
So, yeah.
There's another book, I don't know if you've heard about it. There's a gal was a health worker in California, I think UCLA. Did you see that book? And she said, if anybody gets a cold, they address it immediately, but they do not talk about sexual relations, any of that.
Yeah.
And she really attacked the issue. And, wow, it was huge. I mean, the health prevention was considered wear seat belts, cover your cough, wash your hands. They didn't talk about the sexual issues, which were so huge on the campus. And that's why most of the people are there to get medication.
That's what I really love about this exposure through the Planned Parenthood videos.
Yes.
It is getting people off the couch, people who thought someone else was taking care of it.
Praise
and
the
as
Lord.
hard as it is for all the people who are being triggered by seeing them, it's also brought about a huge increase of people entering the healing programs.
Yes.
And what I like to tell pro-life
great.
people need to focus on the need for healing, because then indirectly the message that abortion is wrong happens without judging those who've already chosen it.
Bingo. That's so that was such a...
The same goal is met.
Yeah.
Without condemning the 43% of women. And the men, oh my gosh, there's men involved too.
Well, there's a man for everyone.
Yep.
Right? I mean, last time I checked.
I like the statement that abortion is so damaging for women because it strips them of their God-given nature as life giver.
Yes.
And it's damaging for men because it strips them of their God-given nature of protector.
Yeah.
I've talked to several men who couldn't discipline their future children. Similar to what I shared.
Wow.
How could they? I mean, look what they did with their first choice.
Men can be drastic.
Absolutely. We have a memorial garden in Odell, Oregon, called the Garden of Hope.
Yes.
And I actually got a phone call from a man who was with his counselor.
Wow.
And he said, I need to place a memorial for my child. And he who was lost to abortion, and he had encouraged it.
Yes.
And so anyway, he now has a memorial for his daughter, and he is speaking publicly now.
Wow.
And he comes often and leaves little stickers and everything. It's just beautiful. Yeah.
Praise the Lord. Well, this is such great work. How many How many strong are you?
How many?
Is there 500 of you out there?
Well, Silent No More has 6,000.
Okay.
6,000.
How many in Washington? Do you have any idea?
I don't know. I know.
You know,
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I used to work with Mary Emanuel, who was in charge of Washington, but she finally retired and turned it over to a gal in Port Angeles.
Yeah, there's probably several.
I think her name is Kathleen Gonzalez. But anyway, I don't think she's able to do anything because, well, she doesn't have the resources, whatever, to reach out. And
Yeah,
I
Silent No
just
More
wish
Awareness.org.
Yeah. I finally joined the group so I get the monthly newsletter.
There you
and so
go.
forth. But we need another 2,000 people here in Washington.
Okay, so here you go. I'm willing to travel to Washington. I will come and speak at churches, rallies, women's retreats. That's my favorite place to speak because I share my testimony on Friday night. By Saturday night, the walls are coming down and I start getting the texts and the phone calls.
Wow. Praise the Lord.